We are already midway through. Hotx Live, the third edition, is running its course at this point. First session of the second half of the marketing track. Kevin Brown, how are you?
Doing fantastic, Armando. How are you today?
I'm very good. I'm very excited to have you. Kevin Brown is the CEO and co-founder at Lead Smart Technologies, and your hot take today is plot twist. That is life outside of your SaaS ICP. Tell us more.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I appreciate one, the invite, and two, everybody being with us today. It's great. So kind of dive into all of this as we get started this morning. And just a little bit about myself. My name is, again, Kevin Brown. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lead Smart Technologies. We are what we call vertical specific and purpose-built CRM and customer intelligence platform using some AI-enabled tools to help our target customers, which are customers that sell through a channel relationship. We'll tell you our story on that shortly here as well. And but we help our focus right now is wholesale distribution and manufacturing, get deep insights into customer relationships in ways that they've not traditionally been able to do. So a little bit about our company. I'll share more about our journey shortly, but a couple interesting facts that we are asked in our deck here to share about ourselves. The first one is a little bit career oriented, and the second one is personal life somewhat as well. So I spent last couple of years after university, last year of university, and about another 7 years afterwards working as a reserve firefighter. Kind of weird to now be a SaaS founder, 30 plus years later. But, the reason I share that is when you're working as a first responder in life and death situations, when people call you to actually go do the important part of your work, it's usually their worst day of their life. And as you learn how to manage and handle those things within your life, what quickly you find out is how unimportant some things are and important others are. And that's translated into my business career to be able to really prioritize things well. I mentioned I've had an opportunity to race sailboats in over 4 different countries. I've been racing sailboats since I was a little boy. And the reason that I mention that is that also has brought me tactical decision-making tools in my career. It delayed my personal life a little bit because I waited till I was 40 years old to get married for the first time. But it's good because my lovely wife of almost 19 years now, Darlene, was married to somebody else first. So glad I waited, spending that time. So let's get in and talk about our main topic here today, which really is that a preface or a thesis that I'll make and share with you is that the traditional ideal customer profiles can actually hamper revenue growth. Bold statement, right? Doesn't mean that that's the fact for everybody, but for many it does. And so the reality of this is that most ICPs, ideal customer profiles, are built around the experience of our founders, right? Of our key initial management team, maybe with some input from some of our investors and so forth. What that tends to potentially do to us is what I would refer to as a pigeonhole, right? That pigeonhole could be somewhere that we get stuck because we don't continually review our ICP and understand that. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. So, the other side of that is most products and ICPs are a chicken and egg, right? We might have an ICP that we've identified and we build a product, or we might have a product we want to build and we build an ICP around that. We can consistently modify those, and I want to chat about that a little bit further today as we go through this. So as we look at the next, trying to get the next slide here. And the last point of this particular slide is that there's blue oceans. If you have not read that Blue Ocean Strategy book, I highly recommend it. Most of us, many of us spend a lot of time focused and kind of, as I mentioned, pigeonholed into specific markets that we may know or understand. And there's great life outside of that. And we'll talk about what that really means. So I'll give you kind of an example of this, right? Depends on whose research you look at. There's 30,000+ SaaS companies out there, right? And growing all the time. 17,000 of those are traditionally B2B SaaS companies, which I think most of us here are. And the challenge that I see and why I wanted to bring this topic up when Armando and I were first discussing this is really tied to the fact that there is this scenario in the world right now that we see that the vast majority of B2B SaaS companies are totally focused on selling to other B2B SaaS companies. Is there anything wrong with that? Probably not. I mean, you could live in that model. What I'd like to suggest to you is that there is a world outside of that. And as this topic was titled, there's a plot twist to that, right? That we could be thinking about this, because there's potential challenges that come if we're in that world of B2B SaaS selling to B2B SaaS. Now, your founder, if you're a founder, you might just, that's what you know. Maybe your executive team, that's what they know. Maybe, as we've seen over and over again in discussions with peers of mine in the investment world that I talk to, is you see angel groups, VC groups, and even private equity groups that are completely focused on B2B SaaS to B2B SaaS because that's how they made their money. That's what they know. But I'm going to suggest that there's some options outside of that as well. So, as we talk about this, just if you looked at the channel SaaS ecosystem alone, there's 223 companies that are solely focused alone on B2B SaaS to B2B SaaS about channel products. So, we can see that this model is what we live with and deal with every day. Let's see if we can get this next slide to advance for us. There we go. So the challenge that we want to talk about here is that, when we look at tech companies, their average, there's a number of different statistics out there, but on average, tech companies spend about $350 per month per employee on SaaS. With that, non-tech companies, right, and this is that potential blue ocean, depending on what your product does, spend about $188. Well, you might first stop and think, well, that's fantastic. This arena, Kevin, you're full of it. Why are you even talking about this? Is that the other side of that is that they spend more. The other side of that, though, is what we really want to talk about, right? That lower group of people there. Because the risk that comes when you're in a setting where you're B2B SaaS to B2B SaaS, which is a very crowded marketplace, or any other crowded marketplace that you might be in, it's compressed margins, right? We've got heavy competition. Sometimes pricing is a race to the bottom. We can probably all think about a boatload of situations that's happened, right? We struggle with the potential for lower ACV, right? We've got pricing battles that going on. Companies will just say, well, we'll just do a small test group because we've got a large IT department and we can implement quickly. And then we've got this noisy landscape out there. The second set of risks are lower lifetime value of the customer, right? Because we're consistently seeing new competitors coming into that B2B SaaS to B2B SaaS world, right? Companies in the SaaS world or technology world, right? They are strong in technology because that's what they do. So bringing a new solution in isn't hard for them, right? Bringing it, whether it's a new CRM or a new ERP or a new marketing automation tool, they can do that and get their data managed very quickly, right? There's price compression that happens in that arena. And then, of course, we face the risk of churn, right? There's lots and lots of options out there of products, and then that just denotes poor loyalty that comes from that. And we mentioned ease of transition out of that, right? So in short, right, if you do some planning, some research, and even sometimes some slight product tweaks, these blue oceans can start to appear, right? Where else can we sell this? Are there sub-markets? Are there new markets that we can be going after? New markets can overtake original ICPs, right? It gives us that opportunity to look at expanding our product offering, maybe even some product tweaks that can help us with that, right? Then we end up with great potential for growth. So I want to give you our story briefly here, is what we did with our company as we started. Our initial ICP was both technology companies and non-tech companies. What we identified, though, with a slight pivot in our product, we had a specific version of our product mostly for manufacturers, was that we pivoted slightly to have an opportunity for wholesale distributors. And in our world, that meant dramatically higher user counts because most wholesale distributors have far more employees. We enhanced that product a little bit. We expanded around it. We realigned how our market focus was to go after this new channel. What did that produce for us? Last year, by going after this new channel, we had zero churn. Our contracts are longer. Our LTV is expanded. We do very little discounting in that setting because we're not chasing others and racing to the bottom. And we've got loyal, raving customers that produce referrals and, more importantly with that, or as importantly, renewals. So takeaways for us today, if I can get, sometimes with the using the slides online here, they take their time in adjusting, is that we really want to be open, waiting on this slide to adjust here, but we really want to be open to new opportunities, right? We want to make our ICP a living document for us that is going to help us move ahead. And that, in fact, for us, don't know why we're here with these slides. So ICPs are a living document. Explore, expand, pivot if you need to, make some product adjustments. That should accelerate growth. This last statement says that sometimes the only way to beat the competition is to stop trying to beat the competition. So find those new arenas, adjust those ICPs if possible, and move ahead with your business. So that's it.
Love it, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So if there are questions from the audience, feel free to write them in the chat. We'll pick them up from there. It's funny, Kevin, because lots of today was around not defaulting to what everyone else thinks should be kind of the obvious answer, right? Like we talked about previously on other related topics, similar to that. And you're saying SaaS shouldn't necessarily be your ICP, or like why is that? And what's the decision framework around it, which I find very, very fascinating. By the way, it's a very much active topic for us at Breadcrumbs as we speak. Funny enough.
Yeah, I think we are, we're creatures of habit, right?
Yeah.
And
easy choice, right?
Path of least resistance.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how we've always lived with that. And the way, Armando, that I've kind of looked at this is, at the end of the day, right, we all have an altruistic side that we built a product that we strongly believe in. Mm-hmm. But the other side of it is, whether it's, in our case, our company's bootstrapped, right? It's our money.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to maximize that. And if we allow ourselves to stay in a place where we become stagnant, and I'm sure there's people that will either watch this live or watch the recording later and say, oh, you know what, we were already doing that. We have our ICP as a living document. We review it monthly. Mm-hmm. That's great. But I'd say most companies probably haven't looked at it in a long time because they're busy. Right?
Yes. I'm curious, what's your decision framework to explore other ICPs/industries? What would you recommend? Like, say that someone, listening in, looking at the recording is like, oh, yeah, maybe I should explore that idea. How should they do it?
Well, so the first thing I'd throw out to you is a mindset, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to adjust because we're all, our product and our companies are like our children, right? So the idea of a shift has to start with a mindset. Mm-hmm. Then, the second part of that is to be open to some, what potentially might be minor product shifts, right? And we had to do that. We had to build another version of our product to really get us to where we wanted to be. And, our development team and my co-founder, Tom, and his team did a phenomenal job of that. But then literally it's like opening your mind and probably your fingers of trying to, do literally internet searches about other companies. And, I'll tell you, they've never been in a better place for this than with the tools that we have with generative AI.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, think about ChatGPT. You could literally go ask ChatGPT right now, my product does this, it has this features, what other markets should I look at? Mm-hmm. And that's going to start triggering.
That might be an example for inspiration, for sure.
Yes, right, because that's what most of us use ChatGPT for inspiration to do other things lately, right?
Yeah. Another way, it's funny because my own hot take earlier today was around the fact that averages are lazy AF way of measuring.
Yeah.
And part of the story there is that if instead of relying on averages, you do like a cohort analysis and a more opinionated breakdown,
right,
there will be stuff that you expect to see.
Yep.
There will be stuff that you didn't expect to see, right? Like there will be outlier, there will be edge cases that might be not, outliers, but potentially pointing to future markets for you.
Yeah. I mean, you could look at, to that similar point, right? You could be looking at your Google Analytics, right? Mm-hmm. You could look at, breadcrumbs. You could look at whatever tools that you're using in your business that lets you see who's even looking at your website, right? Instead of saying they're not in our core ICP,
right?
Stop and say, could they be in our core ICP? Right.
Why are they that interested in us if we're not interested in them?
How did they show up here?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? They got here somehow. Why are they here? And did they spend any time? And if they spend any time, should I be thinking about the market that they're in?
Is there something there for you, right? Like you can investigate even only.
And maybe even why did they move on past us?
Right.
Am I missing something in my product that would have brought those people in? What we found in our shift, Armando, which was really interesting in this, is that when we made a shift we started kind of focused on manufacturing and then tech companies, and we literally now kind of pushed tech companies off to the side just because of bandwidth and our team size. But when we found, I used the term earlier and I moved pretty quickly through, but we talked about submarkets.
Right.
And so we found some new submarkets, but that they go deep. So we're starting right now in like 3 or 4 arenas, and there's probably 50 that we can continue to grow. So this has kind of been our experience. And, we could chat all day probably on this. I just wanted to kind of mention my contact information is here if anybody has an interest in talking. And we host a podcast each week, and we actually talk about some of this type of stuff as well.
Yeah. So one point is that you were mentioning like 17,000 B2B SaaS companies. Like, how many other companies are there in different markets than B2B SaaS? Like hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Tom Burden from the chat, from the audience, is asking, does this apply outside of B2B SaaS?
Yeah, well, 100%, right? I mean, I don't think it matters if let's look at the company you might be familiar with from your homeland that competed against Ferrari of Lamborghini.
Right.
What did Lamborghini start making? Do you know?
I had no idea.
Lamborghini started as a tractor maker.
Oh, okay.
He made farming equipment, right?
Wow.
And he didn't like Enzo Ferrari.
And they were like, wait a second, maybe I should start competing with this guy.
So, I mean, to Tom's point is, I think we could do this in any type of business, right? It's what attributes does my company have? What are we strong at? What, if you're in the manufacturing business, what does our tooling allow us to do outside us? You know, one of the best examples of that is, I think that we could look at it just came to mind, was look at all the companies during the pandemic that shifted their production. My oldest son owns a clothing brand, pretty popular clothing brand in Los Angeles. And next thing they knew, his clothing production lines were making masks with filtration in them because they partnered with a medical company to help them,
On this note, Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to jump off the air for 60 seconds. Welcome our next speaker and come back online. Stay there.